In the previous video, we talked about the potential for the multitude of permits that are required in order to be able to build a custom home here in the city of Phoenix and the surrounding areas. All municipalities are slightly different, but overall, there are definitely quite a few permits that are required for building here in Phoenix. What we didn't cover was the timeframes associated with obtaining those permits and who's responsible for it. So let's get to it. So the first item I mentioned is a demo permit. Now, this is a pretty simple online process to be able to submit for, and it usually takes somewhere between 3 or 4 weeks to be able to complete. Oftentimes, it's the builder of record that's being able to take care of this demo permit, but if you're GCing it yourself, you would talk to your licensed demo professional to be able to take care of this demo permit. In addition to that, we have the dust permit that's associated with demo, and this is actually submitted to the Maricopa County online submittal process, and you have two options. You can go through an accelerated submittal, which is usually a couple weeks, but usually you want to leave yourself about 3 to 4 weeks to be able to get your demo and dust permits in place. As we move on to the civil engineering, these permits are submitted typically by the civil engineer of record. Now, we utilize a self-cert civil engineer. So typically the process is the city has 2 days to be able to recognize that the plans have been submitted and be able to check off the list that everything is appropriately indicated on the plan set. And then from there, they have 10 working days to be able to approve the set of plans. While this process isn't perfect, usually we attribute about 3 to 4 weeks to be able to get a self-cert set of plans in hand. However, if you go the traditional route, usually it'll take somewhere between 2 to 3 months to be able to get this critical piece of the puzzle taken care of. The reason that it's a critical piece of the puzzle is because you can't submit for your residential permits, or at least they will not approve your residential permits until your civil grading and drainage plan set is approved and stamped ready to go. It's because of this that we also utilize a self-cert methodology when it comes to architectural set of plans at Rebuild the Block. We typically work with self-cert architects that are self-certified through the city of Phoenix to be able to help the process go smoothly. This process typically takes about 4 to 5 weeks to be able to get through, or we can go the traditional route where we go through the city revisions, which they usually have a 6-week window for first revisions. If they have revisions, then we have another 6-week window. So the reality is with no revisions, which isn't typical, you're looking at about 2 months. If you have a set of revisions to take care of, you might be looking at 3, closer to 3.5. And if you have yet another set of revisions, which isn't uncommon, specifically with the city of Phoenix these days, it could actually move on to the 4 or 5 month category just to get through residential building permits. So as you can see, there's a wide variance of the overall timeframes associated with the civil and residential building permits, depending on if you decide to go self-cert or not. As for pool permits, typically our pool contractors are going to be taking care of this permit process, and usually it's somewhere between 2 to 6 weeks, depending on the backlog of pool permits that are sitting within the queue. Lastly, if it comes to block fence permits, once again, we're looking at somewhere between 3 or 4 weeks typically to get those permits in hand, granted that we have the appropriate documentation of how many linear feet we are going to be installing within a specific property or site plan. You would think that all these permits can be coupled together, but unfortunately they aren't, and that's why most people work with Rebuild the Block on our pre-construction services agreement to be able to help with this process of being able to get all these permits in play that will allow you to be able to build seamlessly and be able to get your project out of the ground much quicker than trying to handle all of these submittals on your own, or whether you use various subcontractors or design professionals to be able to submit these. It's nice to be able to have someone that's project managing the whole piece of the puzzle so that we can ensure that we can get our permits on time and be able to move on to the most exciting part, which is to be able to go vertical. So as a quick recap, we're about 3 to 4 weeks on demo permits, about 3 to 4 weeks for Maricopa County dust permits. Then as we move on to civil, it can range anywhere from, let's say, 4 to 6 weeks to maybe 3 to 4 months. And then residential building timeframes would be similar, somewhere between 4 and 6 weeks for self-cert, and then bumping up to probably 3 to 4 months for a traditional submittal through the city. And lastly, our pool permits, as well as our block fence permits, are going to range somewhere between 3 and 5 weeks, depending on whether it's pool or block fence, and granted that you have all your details. Overall, I'd like to say that this is one of the more enjoyable parts of the process. However, I will say that this is a major frustration with many clients that are looking to try to get their project out of the ground, and it creates a fair amount of tension between their builder and their design team, as well as the client that's trying to just get their custom home out of the ground. We appreciate you following along. And as always, if you have any questions or comments, please DM us below. Hope you have a great day.